You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Benazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back once again. It is Thursday. It is time to fire up the mics and talk some options. Yes, it is time once again for a little bit of the old OB. My name, of course, Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as from the network. Congratulations to Alan, our pro member, who won the January Pro Trading Crate. If you want to get your name in the hat to win the February Pro Trading Crate, and trust me, you want to get at least one of these in your lives. They're pretty cool. And then, of course, join us for the Pro Q&A sessions, which are completely unique, as well as, of course, options oddities at the end of every week after Vol Views. Only one place to go to get all that: live streams. You could curse out the Flowmaster in real time if you like. I'm just kidding. We have a bunch of good people in there. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro is the place to go to kick the tires and light the fires. Welcome to all the folks who have joined us here to kick off the new year in high style. As we go around the horn, see who's joining us for a little bit of high style today in the world of options. First, out to the quiet, the sleepy, the tranquil hinterlands, known as St. Charles. We are joined once again by the uncleest of Mikes, Mr. Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, still reeling from his appalling miss of Hacksaw Jim Duggan as the winner of the first Royal Rumble on the Monday show.
Mr. Pleasure to be here, even though I'm a little bit behind right now and where I'd like to be in the trivia contest for the year, but I'm doing my best.
Letting the Rock Lobster close within half a point, sir. That's unlike you.
Hey, I'm doing my best. Like the great American dream, Dusty Rhodes said, hard times, daddy.
Let
Gotta
alone
do my best.
Let alone he's closing with an 80s wrestling trivia question. That is your forte if ever there was one, sir. So very surprising events. If you missed
the Rock Lobster's no joke.
if you missed the Monday show, listeners, check it out. It was a doozy. And we are also joined. It's the Thursday episode. It means it's time to welcome on our old pal from the hallowed halls of Cboe East. None other than the Flowmaster himself, Mr. Henry Schwartz. Mr. Flowmaster, welcome back to the show. How goes your Thursday, sir?
Things are great. It's a little bit, there's some freezing rain in New York this morning, so maybe not great, but I won't complain that much. Markets are active. We've had some earnings, things have, we're actually kind of hanging out near highs again. So kind of interesting given the what's going on in the news world. But just good things going on. Happy to be here.
If you were to participate in an 80s themed trivia challenge, how do you think you would fare, sir?
I think 80s I might be able to do okay.
What about if I added the extra wrinkle of 80s wrestling?
No, not
not your forte at all. There we go. So you're in the same boat as the Rock Lobster. As we keep on rolling, listeners, into a little bit of the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the trading block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. As the Flowmaster alluded to, kind of been another wild, topsy-turvy week. I mean, that's to be expected. We are in the teeth of earnings season still. A lot of big names out there popping off throughout the week. Of course, we've got the macro winds buffeting the market one day, tearing them down, next day lifting them up. All sorts of madness going on the geopolitical front. So a lot to mix into the heady stew that is the market. As the Flowmaster said, we aren't that far away right now, right around 6,075 in the S&P. It's not that far away from the all-time highs, given everything that's happened. Might be a little surprising to some. Up nearly 0.3% in the market today. By the way, it is a mixed day on the street right now because the Dow's off about 0.3%, and the NASDAQ up about 1/3% out there as well. So kind of a mixed bag. Depends on where you're hanging your hat out there. Fixed cash continuing to give up the ghost. Down quite a bit since just the Monday show. Down about 3.25 points. We were at almost a 19, about 18.75. Remember, this is another week, listeners, where we came out of the gate hot. Vol was skyrocketing and, well, maybe not skyrocketing, but surging north. And, of course, markets were selling off on the heels of yet another Monday shock to the system out there. It seems like the markets are weathering that storm now. Vol coming in, markets back moving to the north. VVIX also coming back down from the Monday show at about a 97, down 11 points from where we were on the Monday show. So interesting stuff afoot. Of course, we had a lot of news since the Monday show, including some big earnings developments, including Alphabet/Google kind of screwing the pooch, which surprised some folks out there, but still doubling down. Just a few weeks ago, the narrative was, hey, maybe AI will get cheaper and more efficient. And then in the subsequent week and a half, 2 weeks, everyone's like, nope, Metas are going to spend close to $100 billion in the coming years on AI. Google's like $75 billion for us. So the notion of cheap, efficient AI, at least for now, doesn't seem to be happening. But intriguing stuff out there nonetheless. Let's go around the horn. Let's see what's catching everyone's eye. Let's first go out to the hallowed halls of Cboe East. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, a wild week as I was just breaking down what's catching your eye out there in the markets this week and indeed today, sir.
Well, I mean, I think most of the excitement was Monday morning, right, when we came into the news of tariffs, and we had a pretty sharp sell-off. It didn't last very long. I think I actually ran some data this morning because right around 10:15 was the kind of the first headlines about how an agreement was, or an agreement to kind of stall was reached, and we really bounced off of it. So I actually I pulled some data just to kind of figure out which sectors took the biggest hit in that first 15 minutes, which was pretty interesting. I mean, there were some decent moves. I mean, cyclicals especially were down, on average like 3 or 4% for a bit. And so, whereas, energy actually was really not hit that hard, even though I think that on the Canada side, that was a concern. Industrials and materials also were down early. So is pretty interesting. And, and we really did turn very quickly on that, and bounce. And, we'd been looking for, kind of vol to be higher. I think VIX might have touched 20 really briefly, might have even been pre-open based on the overnight SPX trading. But, we're right back to kind of, 15 something, which really is very muted. So, the story of kind of last year was a lot about correlation, and my colleague Mandy Zhu has done some pretty neat things in really breaking VIX or S&P volatility into components. Really, how volatile is the market, and then what's going on in correlation. And when you have low correlation and stocks are kind of all going different ways, that obviously at the index level cancels out, and so you end up with pretty low index volatility, which is kind of what we're seeing right now. Versus when, there's a shock and everything moves together and correlation, goes to 1, because everybody's just selling everything. It felt like Monday morning we kind of got a little glimpse of that. I mean, Bitcoin, I know, was off pretty hard from Friday to Monday, like from 105,000 down to like 90 something. So that was a pretty big swing, but really kind of everything stabilized. And that's, we're seeing it in the activity. We're seeing the volume, which I put out some notes on January, all-time records all over the place, big surprise. But volume's actually kind of quieted back down. We're only running around 50 million contracts a day for the first couple of days of February, compared to what was really almost 58 million a day in January.
Yeah, a wild start to the year. I do have some numbers actually for January, which we'll get to in a little bit. But before we get there, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what is catching your eye in the markets today, sir?
Well, what's really catching my eye is on a macro or on the index level or on all the big stuff is what's not catching my eye. We have not a lot of movement on the S&P. We are pretty much flat in the metals, and we're flat in the bonds. So there's not a lot happening, at least as of right now. Now, of course, that can always change at the drop of a hat. Some of the individual names that are sticking out, just as I'm going down my screen here, Uber is up. It's actually harder to say than you would think. Uber is up 6.5% on the day. Palantir is up about 6.5% on the day. And then Ford, cover your ears, Mark. Ford is down 6.5% on the day.
I'm not familiar with that name you're talking about. What is that dumpster fire you're referring to?
I'm not sure. They do something, but nonetheless, that it is what it is. And Qualcomm is down 4% on the day. So we have some things happening, but really not a ton of movement at this stage. So not a large amount of movement in the markets per se right now. And kind of to add on to what the Flowmaster said, we are kind of hanging out. By the all-time highs, we're roughly 50 points off the all-time highs and the S&P 500. And with all the macro news that we have going on coming out of the White House, it just seems like it's like it was 4 years ago again, and that it's always something happening every day. Whatever side of the political aisle you are on, or if you're not even in a political aisle, whatever the case may be, it is undeniable the news that's coming out of the White House over the course of these last couple of days or these last couple of weeks in terms of what policies may change, executive orders that are coming out. A lot happening, and I'm curious to see what's going to happen with this market as a lot more stuff happens, or are we just going to be in a stage to where we're just numb to where I remember when we on January in the January 6th Capitol ordeal back in 2021, I remember when the market didn't care. So does the market just not care about stuff anymore? And that's what I'll be curious to see for 2025 is the level of how much the market actually cares about stuff that happens.
I've been saying that for a while, right? We've been whistling past the graveyard in this market. There's things popping off on a seemingly regular basis. You might think, that might have some impact for the market. And no, we've been saying that on the show for how long now? Post rebound in 2020. We've been saying that for quite some time. out there listening. Let's see what we're seeing out here and what we're saying out here in the markets today. Let's go out first to the big indexes. Is it a banger day out here in the major index options, listeners? The answer is pretty much no. Not a heck of a lot lighting up the tape, which again, not exactly and entirely surprising, because it is not one of these days like Monday where the market is selling off aggressively out of the gate and vols pop in. It also is not an aggressive whipsaw intraday type of move, which we have seen some volume developing off of those in the past. It's really more of just like, it's a day. It's a day out there on the street, as reflected in the VIX numbers right now, listeners. 429,000 contracts on the tape. That said, the ADV is starting to get a little spicy in VIX land, 916. So whenever you're threatening 1 million contracts a day in VIX, it's probably time to sit up and pay attention, see what's going on in the vol market. What's going on today is a whole heck of a lot of nothing, unless you really love those those Fab 15 puts, which I'm partial to as well. 30,000 of those going up today. Let's see really quickly. What are those trading for out there today? Going up for about 15 cents. Looks like it's part of a spread out there. So if you like those, 15 cents is your huckleberry out there today, listeners. SPY looking surprisingly light, kind of sleepy today. Only 3.8 million contracts. Usually we expect at least 500,000, if not more, above that for this time of the show. The ADV, 8.7 million out there. So open question whether we're even going to hit that today. If we keep on this pace, probably not. The S, same deal, looking kind of sluggish. Only 1.6 million contracts on the tape. That used to be a banger day a few years ago, let's say pre-zero DTE. Now we expect around 1.75 million this time of the show. So not quite getting there. The ADV close to 3.5, about 3.45 million. Small caps looking sleepy as well. 645 on the tape in IWM. The ADV close to 1.5 million. So it's got a long way to go. It's got quite a mountain to climb to hit it. Doesn't seem like it's going to be getting there today. And even the Qs looking a little sluggish out of the gate. The Qs right now, listeners, are about 1.9 million contracts on the tape. So again, fully 1/3 of a million, if not more, below where we expect this time of day. The ADV about 4.25 million. So doesn't seem like they're going to be getting there today either, unless of course we get a pretty active second half of the session. A worm turning, a whipsaw action that could certainly gin up some action out here. Speaking of ginning up some action, are we seeing action out here on the single name front? The answer is yes, it's respectable. 356 to break into the top 10 today. That gets you to Uncle Mike's favorite name. I think he said recently that he put all of the strategic night holdings into this one name now, which is unfortunate for him because once again, they screwed the pooch on earnings. This is, of course, Ford. 936 today, off 66 cents. So they were at around $10 last night. I was looking at that number going into the earnings. I was like, you know what? This company can't get out of its own way. Aggressively overriding the at-the-money calls, and that seemed to work out again today here. Just, again, a dumpster fire in this name. Take the premium you can get. Get the heck out of Dodge, listeners. 9 1/3 out here for good old Ford. 356 on the tape for them. Keeping it in the realm of cars. Uncle Mike was just talking about them. Coming in at number 9 right now. This is Uber. 68.80, up about 4 1/3 or 6 3/4%. So apparently the street liking what they said out there. And I think initially the reaction was kind of mixed to negative because they were 70 3/4. Then they sold off to about 64 1/4 yesterday. And now they're rallying back up today. So kind of a strange 24 to 48 hours out there. They reported the strongest quarter ever. Investors took it to the woodshed, as you would expect. And now a day or so later, turning it back the other way. So kind of some weird price action in Uber. I have to dig in to see what's going on out there. But today, at least, more buyers than sellers. A number 9, Uber, 370 on the tape. A number 8, a frequent offender. It's Meta, 712 1/4, up $7.50 or about 1%. So another good day for Meta. Like I mentioned earlier, they said they're spending all the money on AI. By the way, look at this 52-week range. 414.5 to 718.90. My goodness, $300 range. Most of that to the upside over the course of the past year. Wild range for Meta, number 8, 395 on the tape. Number 7 is the Amazonians, 237.60, up about $1.50 or about 0.6% out there. Again, good for number 7, 432 on the tape. Number 6, SMCI, aka Super Microcomputer, 33.60, up about 215 or nearly 7% on the day. So a nice little pop for them out there. They've had kind of a rough run over the last month, they're off nearly 8%. Looks like they bottomed out on Monday during the Monday show at 26.85. So nice little rebound for them, even though their 52-week low is actually 17.25. It's like they hit that back in November, right after the election, which is kind of interesting timing for that. So if you want to look at glass half full, they pretty much doubled since the election, and they're up looks like about 7 handles or so since the Monday show. So interesting run here for SMCI. Number 6, 485,000 contracts on the tape. Number 5 is the fruit company, daring to look red today. Wow, they haven't been red in a while. 232.10, off about a third of a buck out there. And I joke, but obviously they have had a little bit of red on the screen this week, which is a rare color for Apple. They closed last Friday 237, so they're off $15, or about 6% from there, I should say. By the way, they got down as low as 226 on Monday. So if you want the glass half full, then Apple has rebounded from 226 on Monday, up about $6 from there. Number 5 today, 503 on the tape for the fruit company. Number 4, keeping it in the A tech names, it's AMD. This name's been kind of buffeted all over the place. The NVIDIA news, the DeepSeek news, China maybe looking askance at this market, all of them kind of combining to weigh on AMD. Over the last month, it's off, I should say, about 15%, or about 19, almost 20 handles. Today, it's off about nearly $2, trading right around 110 in the third. Good for number 4, 629 on the tape. Number 3, listeners, we go out to a name. We've been talking about this one for a while. In fact, we were joking about it. May have even been on the Monday show. It might have been with the Rock Lobster about how just expensive this company is right now. This is Palantir. They had, I think, a 430, 450 PE going into their announcement earlier this week. I even said then, I've said this many times, when you're dealing with the magical 2 letters of AI, the other 2 formerly magical letters of PE don't seem to matter anymore. They did not matter at all this week. Palantir just on the rampage. And we got down to $68 not too long ago. It's over 100 again right now. So we're kind of just looking at very wide. It's popping again today, up about nearly $6.5, trading right around 108 or 6.5% today. So after already their PE, don't even ask, listeners, 572, a completely meaningless number at this point. You might say, after that ridiculous rally already this week, why is it rallying again? Oh, because the Goldman, this is why we take a dim view of analysts here on the show, listeners. The Goldman analysts came out this morning and lifted their price target. You might say, oh, the stock's rallying from, about 101 to nearly 108. So maybe they lifted it to 115 or 120. No, they lifted their price target from 41 to 80. But they still have a hold rating on the stock. Not even going to say it's a buy, even though it is now, 20, almost 30 handles north of their updated price target. Again, what a daring analyst, going nearly 30 handles below the at the money level. But that's it. They're still a hold. They like the stock better, but they still think it should sell off nearly 30 handles. But the stock's up nearly $7 on that news. So that's where we are out here in Palantir. By the way, I like this comment from the CEO. They are making America more lethal. That's what the CEO said on their earnings call. Just wild stuff coming out of this name out here, listeners. For a lot of people, they have been seen as the kind of cheap alternative to NVIDIA, the cheap run at AI, not obviously from a valuation perspective, just from a straight share price perspective. Now they're within spitting distance of NVIDIA. NVIDIA today, 128, they're 108. So now they're no longer the cheap, quote unquote, alternative to NVIDIA. So if you're going to buy one over the other, NVIDIA still looks rich at 40 to 50 PE, at about a 50 exactly right now. But it sure as hell ain't 570. My goodness, man. We are in some wild times out here, listeners. And then coming in at number 2, a name it's rocking and rolling. Today it's rocking and rolling to the downside. 369.39, off 8 3/4 or 2 1/3%. It's Tesla. 1.7 million for them on the tape. And number 1, looking kind of light, it's NVIDIA, finally managing to put some green on the screen. 127.87, up about $3 exactly, nearly 2.5%. Good for the number 1 spot, 2.63 million. Since we're talking about numbers, let's look at the numbers finally in from our friends over there at OCC. So the official numbers from our friends over there at OCC. And looks like another banger month. If you're asking, can the options market, can it possibly keep this just tsunami of growth going? after such a banger year last year, a banger December. December usually pretty quiet, listeners. Over 1 billion contracts, just a wild time. You figure it's gotta settle down in January, right? I said last year, January sometimes comes in like a lion. And here we go, listeners. Another banger month, up nearly 18% from January of the year before. 1.1, that's the new magic number, listeners. 1.1 billion contracts as we hit it again in January. 1.16 to be precise. Up nearly 18%. Man, that's wild. Wild numbers here, listeners. Again, index options, surprisingly, kind of the laggard of the bunch, only up 5.1%. I say only, that's still good, but just compared to the other sectors, less growth than we've been expecting. ETF options, 8.3%, so starting to make up for some lost time. And then our old pal, single name equity options, back with a vengeance, up 27.6%. This time a year ago, Henry and I were on the stack panel there in Chicago, and one of the talking points was, man, single stock equity options were kind of flat on the year before, and it was kind of worrisome. Maybe the retail trend was starting to peter out. These numbers are showing us, hey, they are back and back with a vengeance. The one thing that was kind of light, surprisingly, after having a good year was VIX futures, off about 8.6%. Mr. Flowmaster, I know you're tracking these numbers all the time. I was joking about the officialness of your numbers before. Your numbers are also official, Mr. Flowmaster. But what are your thoughts on January just coming in like a lion, nearly 18% over last year, sir?
I work hard to make sure my numbers are correct. Otherwise, people like you yell at me. It was records all over the place. I mean, that and as you said, single stock, but it actually was kind of everything was on fire. Index volume was averaging 4.6 million contracts a day. That's why, as you said, VIX is running almost 1 million contracts a day on average. We're seeing it just was a really, really busy month. It kind of made sense because we went through, the presidential handoff, and then, the flurry of first executive orders and everything else. But there were a couple of things that stood out to me was, you mentioned NVIDIA. NVIDIA was more active than SPY for 2 of the days in January, which is really just mind-blowing. I mean, yes, it is the story that, the stock that everybody's really been talking about for a year, but SPY is the entire S&P 500. I mean, the $30 trillion managed to the S&P 500 as a benchmark. So to see a single stock beat that more than once, really, really, we almost never see that. So one other thing that stood out was the 0DTE volume as a share of the total market was higher. It's kind of leveled off, except January we actually saw the 0DT came in around 23.7% of the volume. So, we're continuing to see people that, either haven't traded it before, give it a try, or people that trade it continuing to trade. So, and one thing, that also is going on is, even over the last few days, there's a pretty big community of premium sellers in the 0DT, usually in the form of condors. They've actually been doing pretty well. They struggled in January. Basically, the vol was a little bit underpriced for about half of January. So that tends to make those trades not work very well. But things have kind of improved. So for the last few days, they've actually been doing better, these condor sellers. And there's obviously a lot of nuance in how they manage those positions and what strikes they pick and everything else. But, I'll tell you, I annualized the January volume. And if it were to keep up at that 57.7 million contracts a day pace, we'd be looking at almost 14.5 billion contracts. So
wow.
I think we're probably going to come in closer to between 13 and 14. I mean, it's pretty safe to say we're going to beat 13, but you never know. I mean, and as we've had a couple of days where it's been a little bit, things have kind of quieted down a little bit. Like Mike said, despite all the news, the panic has subsided. But I think this is going to be the year we see 100 million contract day. So at some point, so there'll be plenty of fireworks for sure.
Yeah, a lot of wild stuff out there. NVIDIA beating SPY. They say it's NVIDIA's market. We're all just living in it. That would be 2 more data points backing that bad boy up. Speaking of data points, keep an eye on the website, listeners, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab. if you want to stay abreast of the latest earnings vol numbers out there for you, listeners. If you crunch that data right now, you would see our friends over there have the season still hanging out. Well, the average is still 117, which in and of itself is just, I think the technical term is ridiculous. But this season already looking pretty aggressive. We have updated our numbers through Monday, so have to crunch the data for today, listeners. But already through Monday, it's at 134% for this cycle, which again, kind of just shows outperformance is the name of the game. It's a wild time. We've been waiting for a while to maybe see this earnings vol settle down, come back to earth. Has not come to pass yet, as you can see from our long-term average. Continues to explode all the way up to 117%. What about unusual activity? Is that exploding? Let's find out, listeners. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, we'll get to today's and this week's activity in a minute, but you know what? It's the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's play a drum roll if we have one, listeners, because I know a lot of you have written in, when is the Flowmaster going to do his homework? When is he finally going to crunch the numbers for the entirety of last year and look back at the full panoply, the full breadth of 2024 and give us a concise minute-by-minute, blow-by-blow breakdown of the trades and trends that stood out to him? Well, there we go, listeners. I budgeted for him the entirety of the remainder of the show, all 26 minutes. Mr. Flowmaster, the floor is yours. Have at it. The folks expect quite a bit from you, sir. Can you deliver?
Well, let me just say that we could spend the whole next, hour or two talking about all of the unusual activity that we saw in 2024 and really looking at how most of those trades turned out. But I would rather focus on some more recent dynamics. And
so that's code for he didn't do his homework yet again, listeners. Just letting you know.
I didn't, and eventually it'll be next year. So I want to talk about Ford from yesterday though, because that really was a standout. In fact, we saw one really big trade. Now, everybody knew that earnings were coming, and there's been plenty of news about Ford. It's pretty beaten up stock, but it's a household name. But we saw a big chunk of puts bought. So the March 9 puts, 45,000 of them were bought for 17 cents around lunchtime on the Cboe trading floor. And when you see a trading floor print, you always kind of want to dig because there's people involved. It's not fully electronic, so you have to be very careful in terms of identifying buyer and seller. Was it tied to stock or was it part of something more complex? In this case, the data confirms that the 17-cent buyer, when the quote was 15 cents at 17 cents, was an opening customer buyer. And a market maker, one or two of them, took the other side of the entire trade. Now, by the end of the day, almost 80,000 or 90,000 of these things had traded, but the open interest really moved kind of specifically by the 45,000. A total of 58,000 opened. I think some of that was people going along. They closed at 22 cents, so this thing showed up at the top of the trade of the day query that I run. So that was a 30% move, or $230,000 on that $750,000 investment. And they're even up a little bit further today. I think trading around 24 cents because now the stock's down at 937. It's a big directional trade. Now there was a lot going on, and the truth is that based on what the straddle was pricing in, I think around 7% last night, and the stock's down just not quite 7%. So the magnitude of the move did not really surprise. The market was pricing this in, but this trader specifically got the direction right. That's for sure. And it's a big trade. Now they did, they used Marches instead of February, so I think they were giving themselves a little bit of room in case stock didn't take a hit immediately. But they've made their money. They haven't gotten out yet. I haven't seen them. Haven't seen any real sign of that yet. But it's a big winner.
Yeah, big winner, unlike all the Ford stockholders who continue to be losers, unfortunately for you. Like I said, I aggressively overwrote, and I'm glad I did. I looked at the numbers. I was like, I don't see any way that these numbers are good. And this other person taking the other side of that, 17 cents, obviously looking pretty decent today. Might be a fun flash poll. March 9 puts. You like those, listeners, in March for 17 cents? You probably like them now because they're up. But in general, you like that buying puts on the 9 strike going out to March? Are you fading Ford? Are you selling those? Are you just can't touch Ford with a 10-foot pole? I see you either way you go out there, listener. Let's keep going into some more names that the Flowmaster has spotted out there today. This is a newcomer to the program. This is Seal SQ Corp. Seals Q Corp. Ticker symbol of LAES, LAES. So this thing's all over the freaking place name-wise. Seals Q Corp. Out of Switzerland. Looks like it's another one of these quantum chip makers, listeners. Oh yeah, because Rigetti's in the related, and we all know about Rigetti. If you don't, listeners, listen to Options Oddities. We had some wild trades in Rigetti. Seals Q 415 right now, up 33 cents or about 8.7%. Let's see, a year ago, listeners, it was about a little bit shy of $3, $2.93. So it's up about $1.25 on the year. So it's had a good year, obviously, but also not the rampage. Well, let's take it back. It had a good run towards the end of the year because it sold off after it hit nearly $4 a year ago, $3.55 on February 7th, almost exactly a year ago. It pretty much spent the rest of the year selling off. By December 9th, oh my goodness, this thing was 39 cents, listeners. You could have bought all you wanted on December 6th and December 9th for 39 cents. Then it started gapping up. By December 17th, it was $3 again. And then just to follow along with its old pal Rigetti, on December 27th, it hit nearly $11, $10.97. It has obviously given up that ghost now. Got back down to $2.99 on the Monday show. And back up again this week, up another $1 or 33% since the Monday show. So another wild ride in quantum computing. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what did you spot out here in everyone's new favorite, LAES?
Yeah, this one, I have never seen this before. I noticed the options only seem to have been around for about a month, even though it did IPO last in 2023. So I'm not quite sure. Maybe it didn't meet the minimums for listing and then finally got there, especially, that's what it must be, because if it was 38-cent stock in most of 2024 and then then it kind of exploded up to the $9 level in DEES, that's when you would have gotten the average price. I believe the average has to be $7 for a part of a week, kind of. So it's a crazy one. As you said, trading around 415, 420-ish today. I noticed it because the vol is up, even though the stock is up. So seeing vol go up with a stock, that's a little bit unusual. It's a little bit memey. And then another thing that I noticed is there's no borrow on this stock. So it's had borrow kind of periodically, meaning you people could short it, but it was very expensive, like in the 30 to 40% range annualized, and then the borrow's gone again today. So a couple of the specific trades that are out there, they're March 4 strike calls. So basically the at the money calls expiring in March. They're trading kind of in the dollar range. It's not super clear to me if it's a buyer or a seller, but given that the vol's higher, I'm actually going to kind of assume that that's probably a buyer, the premium. And, like I said, I'm not familiar with the stock, but you got 13,000 calls on the tape versus just 1,700 puts. The average daily call volume is only about 1,800. So a weird one, definitely worth keeping an eye on. At a $4 level, I don't know if I'd trade options. I might buy a little bit of stock just to hold kind of if the thing continues to get whippy.
Yeah, it sounds wild to say that out loud, that a stock that was 39 cents like a month and change ago, now you're willing to pay $4. But on the flip side, the momentum some of these quantum names have had. Like, they were by far some of the most dramatic movers we talked about in options oddities. And it was all in the span of a couple of weeks in December of last year. So you're right. These things can move. If they get the animal spirits, listeners, look out above or right back to 39 cents. Either way, you won't be bored if you're slinging a little bit of LAES or Rigetti or any of these other quantum names that are just crazy town out here. Speaking of crazy town, listeners, the Flowmaster may not do his homework, but you know what? We do his homework for him sometimes. And I was talking earlier, just to continue my looking at the trades and trends of last year, listeners. One of the big trends I talked about on the show on Monday was Bumble. Size put sellers for pretty much month after month in Bumble. We speculated a lot what the heck was going on out there. Did someone really want to almost take over the stock? I mean, the amount of size they were selling, they would pick up a sizable portion of the float if they got the stock, or I should say the puts and the stock really put to them. But there were a few times, I highlighted one when they mostly skated. One time, a couple of times, listeners, really, where it kind of, the worm turned on them. And the Flowmaster highlighted one of those on the show last year as well. It was the August 8th show, listeners. He talked about, looks like our put selling friend was finally giving up the ghost in Bumble, getting the heck out of Dodge. And every month after month, like clockwork, we were saying, man, this person, how smart are they? They always pick the right strike. They always keep all of their premium. They're always just ahead of the sell-off, so they don't get the stock put to them. This time, they were not smart enough, listeners. They sold a boatload of the 8 half puts. I think these were the Julys for 14 cents. They sold them back late June 25th. And the stock took a nosedive. When the stock hit $7.84, they decided to end their pain. They bought back 40,000. These are sizable put sales, listeners. They paid 80 cents for these bad boys. Now, when you sell them for 14 cents, you buy them back for 80 cents. That's a bit of an ouchie. The Flowmaster crunched the numbers to the tune of a little north of $2.5 million, about $2.6 million. Those puts were trading over $2, $2.60. So he actually turns out he made the right choice, or she, because they would have lost to nearly $8 million, which is a huge loss for selling the 8 half puts. I mean, that's just, of course, you do anything 40,000 plus times, it's going to come back to bite you. They did sell a few more, 11,000 or so, a little bit higher, 15 to 25 cents. Maybe that helped, but not when they're trading 260. Mr. Flowmaster, do you recall this being an ongoing theme last year in the odd block of this person just continually drawing eerily prescient lines in the sand in Bumble, and this also being the one standout moment because this is the one time they got it wrong, sir?
I do remember Bumble. We looked at that, and it was exactly that. It was that line in the sand, put seller, maybe kind of the Warren Buffett mentality, which is like, listen, if it gets down there, I'll just take the whole company. But obviously that, when things can change and, macroeconomics can change too. And, if it really happens, you're probably not going to be in as cheery a mood about taking the whole company at a price that's above what the market price currently is. So, we've seen this, there's a handful of names that we see this. It does make the market makers and the kind of trading community gets very comfortable about it because they're like, well, I feel like if it gets down there, there's basically some major support created by the fact also that, that the market makers are along that gamut too, right? So if it does get down there, they're going to be basically buying some stock. So, these big outsized trades, I think they're always really interesting if it's a really large chunk of the, the stock float in notional terms. It's a major, it's somebody big who's involved. To see him take a whack happens, but, I would imagine that they were big enough it didn't really bother them.
You know who's always big? It's our listeners. Let's get to you now. A little bit of the old mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the all-star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the mail block.
All right, let's get to the mail block. Looking at the live really quick. Mr. Flowmaster, the live chat's giving you a hard time. Frank saying Henry not doing his homework again. Nichols saying the dog ate his homework. So they're giving you a hard time in the, of course, Options Queen is standing up for you. She's saying, don't pick on the Flowmaster. He's great. So there you go. You got one fan. Maybe is Options Queen your mom? You could tell us, sir.
No, but I'd be happy to buy her coffee.
She is eerily precise when it comes to all things vol. So she's a good one to have on your side. Let's see what side you folks are on right now, listeners, when it comes to our contentious questions of the week. We also have a fun flash poll going on about Ford right now. We'll get that in a second as well. We asked you folks last week on the show, really quick payoffs. Do you think, given all the madness that has happened out here, listeners, what do you, especially last week, of course, it was all about the DeepSeek. And we were asking you folks quite simply, is DeepSeek the canary in the coal mine? Will the S&P 500 close positive on the year? Yes, no, or who cares? I'm in crypto. Who cares? I trade vol. 46% of you saying the S&P is going to close negative this year. So they're saying no, it's not going to close positive. 32% saying yes. So Uncle Mike, cover your ears. You may not like these results. 18% saying, I don't care. I'm busy slinging vol. And 4% say you don't care. You're busy slinging crypto. And more to the heart of the DeepSeek thing, because obviously it targets specifically names like NVIDIA. We said, well, NVIDIA closed positive on the year. And kind of weird results, because nearly half of you said the S&P is going to close down on the year, but 70%, an overwhelming majority of you say, heck yes, NVIDIA will close positive on the year. So kind of wild. I have to admit, I don't really foresee that particular scenario unfolding, but who am I to second guess the genius that is our audience at the end of the day? You folks are the arbiters of all things. Right now, though, you can't make up your mind on whether or not you like Ford at all. We said those Ford March 9 puts traded 17 cents earlier this week, 45,000 times. At that price, are you a buyer or a seller? Obviously, the stock's moved your way, so you probably want to buy those at this point. Only half of you want to buy them. The other half say you can't stand Ford. I get it. It is quite the dumpster fire out there, listeners. But our actual question of the week right now, which is clearly dividing our audience. You know, the beginning of this week, the thing that last week on the Monday kickoff, the Monday inciting event for the market was, of course, DeepSeek. This Monday, it was the kickoff of the tariffs and the potential of some escalating trade wars around the globe. So we thought we'd ask you folks, tariffs, the threat of escalating trade wars seem to be roiling the markets a bit these days. Is this a tempest in a teapot, or do you think we'll be dealing with the fallout for some time? Quite simply, how long do you foresee the tariffs impacting the market and volatility? Is it a tempest in a teapot? Do you think it's going to be impacting us in the short term, let's say through Q1, or a little bit longer through Q2, or you think it's going to be through Q3 and beyond? Uncle Mike, I know you're still recovering from the fact that nearly half of our audience thinks the market's going to close down on the year, so you'll have to make your peace with that. But what are your thoughts on the impact of these tariffs? Is this going to be a tempest in the teapot? Is it going to be around a little bit longer? And then B, what do you think our audience is voting for?
I think it's going to be around a little bit longer, just because it's whether Trump continues to use them or not, I don't know. But I think it's going to definitely be a talking point. And it seems to be just kind of like a weapon that he uses for negotiating. And sometimes he'll ease off on them. Sometimes he'll go harder with them. And I don't know if these specific tariffs will be there for the long term. But I think that the talk of tariffs and putting on tariffs and taking off tariffs, and them playing a role in short-term markets, I think that's going to be here for 4 years. So that's my opinion. And I think the audience agrees with me.
4 years. Yeah. So there you go. You'd be in the Q3 and beyond category then, definitely. Mr. I almost said Rock Lobster. I apologize. Mr. Flowmaster, sir. What are your thoughts, and what do you think our audience is lining up on the impact of these tariffs, sir?
Well, I agree. I think it's going to be that kind of year or two, which is just, some wacky headlines. And, some of those are going to be tariffs. Some of them are going to be threats. It's really hard to kind of make sense of what's a threat and, what might actually be some action. So I think that's why you kind of get some of these whipsaws. And that, that's kind of Trump's whole MO is, saying things that rile people up, and you don't quite know how that's gonna kind of smooth out. So, and I think listeners are going to agree that it's going to stay. We're going to stay rocking. I mean, we're looking for VIX to be kind of hanging around 18 for the year. So right now we're below that. But I think it's going to be a little more volatile than this in general. We've had a couple of days to just relax, which is nice. But I would imagine it's going to get interesting again pretty quick.
Trump is definitely a riler. That's one thing you could say about him. He is definitely the riler in chief out there listening. Let's see what you folks are saying. And right now, almost a third of you, 31.3% saying it's a tempest in the teapot. So you're not really paying much heed to the tariffs out there. But the audience, you're pretty close to split. 25% coming in for the number 2 spot saying it's going to be a short-term impact through Q1. And then we have a tie of about 22% each for midterm, so through Q2, and then also about 22% saying through Q3 and beyond. So in the Uncle Mike camp out there, we got some people chiming in as well, like Age, one of our pro members, saying he includes grains in his definitions of the markets, so he thinks this will be ongoing way past Q3. And of course, that's a good point. If you expand we're obviously focusing on equities here, but if you expand that definition to include commodities or energy or whatever the case may be, we could be seeing these impacts for quite some time. FX certainly. So a lot going on out there. The Option Premium, interesting handle, says tariffs often create short-term volatility spikes, but lasting impact depends on economic ripple effects. For options traders, watch for elevated implied vol in the affected sectors. Short-term, great for premium selling strategies. Long-term, adjust your delta exposure as macro trends unfold. So there you go, a little bit longer term. And I like this answer from our resident humorist, Mr. Vernon Griffin. He says, hard to say, but probably about as long as it takes me to assemble IKEA furniture, which is somewhere between a couple of weeks and a few months. As someone who just recently assembled a bookcase from IKEA, and you're right, it took me, I think the pizzas were sitting around for a while before I finally finished it. I could feel your pain. In fact, I think I still have to put the knobs on it, so technically it is not done. But I feel I like that. The IKEA bookcase gauge, a couple of weeks to a few months. As we keep on rolling, listeners, it is time to go around the block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, listeners, as we're coming into the end of the show here, it does seem like the markets are maybe turning a little bit more to the downside. S&P is only up about 0.15%. NASDAQ's up about 1/3%. The Dow off nearly 0.5% now, about 0.45%. So a little bit more red on the screen than there was when we started the show. But you know these markets, you can wait 5 minutes. That could be very different. VIX cash still close to 15.5, about 15.45. So not a huge evolution on the vol front. Let's go out now to the Uncle list of Mikes. Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, what are you keeping an eye on until the Monday show, sir?
All-time highs. Want to keep an eye on that. With a little bit of bond buying that's come in the last few days. Want to see if that continues. The other thing that I think would be interesting to watch is mortgage rates have been averaging 7%. With these bond buyers coming in, seeing if mortgage rates can come down and then kind of create a ripple effect in other areas of business and commerce.
Business and commerce, says Uncle Mike. Mr. Flowmaster, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on till your next appearance next Thursday? Because we know you won't be busy doing your homework.
Well, I'm busy with a lot of things. We have Amazon earnings after close today. Some other kind of fun ones that'll be interesting next week. I know we have Robinhood and some retail ones. Coinbase also next week, and next week is Valentine's Day too. And then I really think watching the macro picture is going to keep people busy. It's also really interesting. As you said, today's kind of really the range is pretty muted today, and we kind of seem to be just kind of hanging around flat almost, which is exactly what these condor sellers are hoping would happen. But it doesn't take much to move things. So, I'll be kind of keeping an eye on that and looking for these vol spikes across the different products.
All right, everybody, that music means we're done spiking, at least for this show. But if you want more content, more goodness in your life, and maybe you're intrigued about the commodity markets we were just talking about, then stay tuned. I'll be back instantaneously, immediately after this show. So all you folks hanging out in the live, you get a treat. I'll be in your ear holes immediately after this program, talking some futures options over there on the old TWIFO. So stay tuned for that. If you're listening after the fact on the podcast, just hit next on your device of choice. TWIFO should be there waiting for you with bells on. And Mr. Uncle Mike, if folks want to reach out to you to chat all your favorites, crypto, Cisco, all that good stuff, maybe a little Ford, where should they go? What should they do?
stcharleswealth.com if you're looking for a financial advisor who delves in the option product and kind of likes it.
I can testify, listeners. He does kind of like it. Check him out over there, stcharleswealth.com. And Mr. Flowmaster, sir, if folks want to check out all the cool goodies you have cooking over there in Cboe land, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, you can always find us at Cboe.com. And for our data and platforms, you want to go Cboe.com/RMA, which is Risk and Market Analytics. That's where we have our platforms and data sets. And for the platforms, we're happy to set people up with a trial so they can kick the tires for themselves.
Kick the tires over there, Cboe.com/RMA to learn more. A lot of cool stuff over there, listeners. We kind of just scratched the surface of it here on the show, looking at some unusual activity, looking at some of the overall flow, but you could do a lot. I would almost say it's worth the price of admission alone just for the life-to-date flow summary. If you just use that alone will save you so much time. And I use it literally every day, multiple. Oh, when did that go up? Oh, let's go see. Oh, it went up on July 25th. That kind of thing. Evidently useful in your trading. Check it out over there. Begin your journey to the dark side. Come on over. It's a fun side. Cboe.com/RMA is the place to go. We got to get on out of here, but don't worry. We'll be back instantaneously talking some futures options over there on TWIFO. Then back again tomorrow to round out the week, talking vol over there on Volatility Views. And if that's not enough, listeners, we'll be back one final time exclusively for all you cool cats and kittens hanging out in the secret club with a little bit of options oddities. If you like that Rigetti, all that quantum stuff, we were on that tip very early on all that fun over there. Check out oddities. It's been a wild time of late. I think it's going to continue. Check it out over there on the Pro. Only place to get it, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. Then we're back again on Monday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options. stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions@theoptionsinsider.com.